As we all know, the League of Women Voters has two separate and distinct roles. We represent unbiased, nonpartisan information about elections, the voting process and issues. That's number one. And number two is we are nonpartisan, though we are nonpartisan. After studying, we use our positions to advocate for or against particular policies in the public interest. Comments and opinions, therefore, of the folks who might speak today are not necessarily those of the League, and will be here from noon to 1. And the format for today has been changed a little bit. Don't mute if you want to be part of this program interactively. You can put your hands up if you want to say something. Or if you don't want to speak, you can put your comments in the chat. And we will read them. But if everybody unmutes, then we can all kind of talk. But just be aware that other people are talking as well. So we have to be kind to one another. For more information about the League of Women Voters and their positions, go to www.lwvsouthbend.org. And for current news right now of the League, this is the season. Primary voting will be here before you know it, and we have work to do. As Elizabeth Benyon knows well, right? Members, please review the latest League of Women Voters news update for upcoming candidate events that are happening this month. The South Bend mayoral debate on March 19th, the Democratic primary debate for city clerk on March 21st, and the Democratic primary debate for at-large candidates for South Bend County Council members. And I didn't put that date, the 28th, I think. Oh, I remembered.
Yeah.
And we need folks to spread that around. It'll be on Facebook, but it's also in that email. Send it out to your friends and family and whatever for people to know about it. She'll need volunteers as ambassadors from the League. And those are folks that have a table and they help the folks get about and get in and, do the things they have to do to get in to watch the debates. And she also needs folks to attend so we can hear what these people have to say. Again, check for the last call for action news update. Check your Facebook and our League of Women Voters website, and you can get more detailed information. Another item of interest, there will be an Equal Pay Day rally on March the 15th at 5 p.m. at the east side steps of the St. Joe County Courthouse. And this isn't necessarily a League of Women Voters thing. This is just something you might be interested in doing. It's at downtown South Bend. Wear red, bring your friends, to raise awareness about the wage gap and its impact on women and minorities. And now for today, and most of these women we all know because they're all here. Wait, we got some people here. The speakers for today are Barb Carmichael, Nimby Cushing, Cynthia Heckman Davis, Penny Hughes, Barbara Young, Ronnie Malone, Beth North, Terry Russ, Melanie Smith Guillaume, and me. And we want to thank all of these ladies for just being so helpful with all this.
Thank you.
And in honor of Women's History Month, we'll be celebrating this hour of highlights of lives of exceptional women. Some of them you might know, and some of them you're not going to know at all. Don't mute, because if you have questions or comments about any of these particular women, we can take those now. If we got to keep it kind of short because we might run out of time, but and then there's going to be a quiz between each one of these ladies. And if you know the answer, you have a short time to call it out. And then we'll discuss, if we have any time at the end, we will discuss the questions that we had. I'll tell you some questions that we'll consider while we're reading these. Okay, today, there are so many women. I picked a few women, just a few, but there are so many. And the theme for this year for Women's History Alliance, wait a minute, I have to do this. I got to share my screen. Kind of. How do I get there? There, I can get it that way. Just a minute. There we are. Can you all see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. The theme for this year is set by the Women's History Alliance, celebrating women who tell our stories. The timely theme honors women in every community who have devoted their lives and talents to producing, to pursuing truth, to reflecting the human condition decade after decade. And I've spent a lot of time reading and writing about these fine women. Each one of them could have taken up over an hour. And I've kind of fallen in love with all of them, and I hope you do as well. Now I want to do a little bit of history about Women's History Month. It's designated by presidential proclamation every year, and it's set aside to honor women's contributions in American history. It didn't start out as Women's History Month. It started out as Women's History Week. In 1980, a consortium of women's groups and historians successfully lobbied for a national recognition. In February, 1980, President Jimmy Carter issued the first presidential proclamation declaring the week of March 8th, 1980 as National Women's History Week. And I thought it was important to mention him. You know, I'm not sure, am I going to see somebody who knows about Zoom and stuff? Am I going to see when people need to come in?
You should.
Because I got, okay, well, we'll see. Because my
Yeah,
pages,
Pam, if you want to make someone a co-host, then they can monitor the waiting room for you.
that would be, how do I get back there? Because now I'm, okay.
Click on participants, and then you can choose somebody to make a co-host.
Okay. I'll make it Melanie, or I'll make it Kathy, because she's not going to be doing a talk of anybody. How do I do that now?
There's a more section on the participants list. So by your person's name, check that, and then it'll give you a drop-down box of make co-host.
I'm sorry, guys. There you go, Kathy. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought with Jimmy Carter still with us, I thought it was important that I read part of his proclamation for the very first proclamation. His proclamation in part was, from the first settlers who came to our shores, from the first American Indian families who befriended them, men and women have worked together to build this nation. Too often the women were unsung, and sometimes their contributions went unnoticed. But the achievements, leadership, courage, strength, and love of the women who built America was as vital as that of the men whose names we all know so well. As Dr. Gerda Lerner has noted, women's history is women's right. It's an essential, indispensable heritage from which we can draw pride, comfort, courage, and long-range vision. I ask my fellow Americans to recognize this heritage with appropriate activities during National Women's History Week, March 2nd through March 8th, 1980. In 1986, 14 states had already declared March as Women's History Month. This momentum and state-by-state action was used as a rationale to lobby Congress to declare the entire month of March 1987 as National Women's History Month. And In that year, Congress declared March as Women's History Month in
Perpetuity.
perpetuity. Don's sitting here giving me my words. A special presidential proclamation is issued every year. And while we're reading about this, if folks would like to list as we're listening and reading, a few questions that you might want to think about, and then we can talk about them at the end. And you can put them in the chat, or we can talk about them, you know, you can just raise your hand later. And if you want to unmute, you can do that too. Did anything surprise you about these stories? That's one thing to think about. What do these women have in common? What can we learn from these women individually and as a group? And do you have another woman to add to this list? Who and why? And there we go. And now we will start our PowerPoint and our speakers. Autherine Lucy, I'm sorry. Barb.
Yep. Autherine Lucy was born in 1924 and she passed away in 2022. She was the first African-American to attend the University of Alabama. On September 24th, 1952, Autherine Lucy and close friend Polly Ann Myers applied to the University of Alabama without indicating their race and were accepted. Myers hatched the idea and convinced Lucy to go along with the plot. The newspaper, the Birmingham World, where Polly Ann Myers worked, celebrated their admission on the front page. Realizing who the applicants were, the university revoked their admission. The university president, Oliver Carmichael, no relation, resigned. On October 10th, 1955, the US Supreme Court ordered the university to admit the two women. After a delay of 3 years, they allowed Autherine Lucy to attend. They claimed Myers could not attend the school since she was unsuitable due to the fact that she had married after she had become pregnant out of wedlock.
Oh, God.
Oh, my.
Lord.
Autherine Lucy attended Alabama for a short time, but left due to rioting about her admission. She received her BS degree in English somewhere else, but returned then to the university to receive her master's degree.
Interesting.
Annie Dodge Waneka. Annie Dodge Waneka was born in 1910 and died in 1997. She was an influential member of the Navajo tribe as member of the Navajo Nation Council. As three-term head of the council's Health and Welfare Committee, she worked to improve the health and education of the Navajo. Waneka focused mostly on the eradication of tuberculosis within her nation. She also authored a dictionary, which she translated English medical terms into the Navajo language. She was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1963 by Lyndon B. Johnson, as well as the Indian Council Fire Achievement Award and the Navajo Medal of Honor. She also received an honorary doctorate in humanities in public health from the University of New Mexico. In the year 2000, Waneka was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame.
Thank you. And I forgot to put in my little quiz question. Here's my little quiz question. And I don't know how to see everybody, so I won't. Yeah, I won't see everybody. Who was the first woman in modern history to lead? Kathy, you can take charge of this. Who was the first woman in modern history to lead a major Native American tribe, the Cherokee Nation? Can anybody get? Okay,
Was it Annie?
it was Wilma
Wilma
Mankiller.
Mankiller.
Oh,
right.
okay.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Oh,
Okay.
Linda Conyers.
Babe Dietrichson Zacharias was the first female sports star. She played her way into national fame in 1932 when she entered the U.S. Women's Track and Field Championship as the sole member of the team. Despite competing in the team's events alone, she won 5 events and overall championship. Her next stop was the 1932 Los Angeles Olympics, where she took home 3 medals, 1 silver and 2 gold. Zacharias teed her way onto the golf scene in 1934, when she was the first woman to play in a PGA Tour event. She continues to hold the record of 17 amateur tournaments. Women didn't have a professional league yet. For the longest winning streak in golf history, male or female, a feat she accomplished between 1946 and 1947. Along with 12 other women golfers, she formed the Ladies Professional Golf Association in 1950. She won her last U.S. Women's Open by a record margin of 12 strokes, just a year after being diagnosed with colon cancer. Not only did she excel in track and field and golf, but also in baseball and basketball. Further, she was a seamstress, making her own clothes and golf outfits. She was named Female Athlete of the Year 6 times by the Associated Press.
Thanks, Beth. Next quiz question for somebody to call out. Who earned a graduate degree from Oberlin College in 1888, was the first Black woman to serve on the Board of Education in DC, sued to integrate restaurants in the 50s, integrated the American Association of Women, University Women at the age of 85, and was a founding member of the NAACP.
You're no longer my good friend, Pam Wycliffe. As many times as we have walked over the month, could you not have given me a clue? I don't know, and I feel ashamed.
No, you shouldn't feel ashamed, but it's kind of fun. Mary Church Terrell.
I've heard of her, but I couldn't have told you what she did.
Well, now you know. Okay,
Okay, Barbara Rose Johns Powell was a leader in the American Civil Rights Movement. On April 23rd, 1951, at the age of 16, Powell led a student strike for equal education at R.R. Motion High School in Farmville, Prince Edward County, Virginia. After securing NAACP legal support, the Motion students filed Davis versus Prince Edward County, the only student-initiated case consolidated into Brown versus Board of Education, the landmark 1954 U.S. Supreme Court decision declaring separate but equal public schools unconstitutional. In 1920, Johns was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. On December 16, 2020, Virginia's Commission on Historical Statutes in the United States Capitol voted to commend that a statue of Barbara Johns represent Virginia in the National Statuary Hall, a place of the current statue of Robert E. Lee. The Lee statue was removed the night of December 20th of 21. It is slated to be replaced by a statue of Johns once a formal vote of the Virginia State Legislature has taken place.
Oh,
And that vote had taken place, and they now have commissioned
good.
a person to do it. A person to do it.
Good.
Okay, another question. Who is the architect of the Vietnam Veteran Memorial in Washington, DC, which she designed when she was only 21 years old?
Oh, I don't know her name.
Mia,
Pardon?
is it Mia?
Yes. Mia Lin.
Yeah.
Very good, Ronnie, you're ahead.
Jin
Okay.
Chung Woo was born in 1912 and died in the United States in 1997. Dr. Chin Chung Woo was a Chinese American particle and experimental physicist who made significant contributions in the fields of nuclear and particle physics. She was recruited by Columbia University to work as a senior scientist on the Manhattan Project, where she developed the process for separating uranium into uranium-235 and uranium-238 isotopes by gaseous diffusion. She is best known for conducting the Woo experiment. Using chemical isotope cobalt-60, she showed that the laws of nature were not always symmetrical, disproving a theory that had been accepted for more than 30 years. That discovery resulted in her male colleagues Tsungyao Lee and Chenning Yang winning the 1957 Nobel Prize in Physics, but she was not included. And I might add that she was not paid as much as her male professional colleagues. Wu was awarded the inaugural Wolf Prize in Physics in 1978. Her expertise in experimental physics evoked comparisons to Marie Curie. All this,
Whoops.
yeah.
Thanks, Cynthia. Okay, quiz time. Who wrote we might know this one. Who wrote the path-breaking book on death and dying in 1969, which educated and supported helpers who provide compassionate care?
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Everybody knows that one.
Everybody knows that.
Okay,
Obey, for those who couldn't discern the name,
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
thank you, Beth. I had to throw one in that everybody would know.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Constance Baker Motley. Constance Baker Motley broke racial and gender barriers throughout her career while fighting for the civil rights of all Americans. She was the first Black woman to argue at the Supreme Court and argued 10 landmark civil rights cases, winning 9 of them. She was a law clerk to Thurgood Marshall, aiding him in the case Brown versus Board of Education. Motley was also the first African-American woman appointed to the federal judiciary, serving as United States District Judge of the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. In 1965, Motley was elected president of the borough of Manhattan to fill a young one-year vacancy. She was the first woman to hold the office. As president, she authored revitalization plans for Harlem and East Harlem, successfully fighting for $700,000 to improve these and underserved areas of the city.
Okay, thank you. Quiz. Who started Mother's Day as an annual event when women could demonstrate against war? The first event was a Women's Peace Festival on June the 2nd, 1873. Now, somebody should know that one.
Harriet Beecher Stowe? No.
Oh, no.
Eleanor Roosevelt?
No,
No.
No, too early. Yeah.
oh, yeah, that's true. She did
how
say-
about Julia Ward Howe?
Oh, right.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Betty Lamar.
Ah,
Miss Lamar was an Austrian-born American film actress and inventor. She was often called the most beautiful woman in film But she was more than what met the eye. While her screen presence made her one of the most popular actresses of her day, she was also an inventor with a sharp mind. Along with avant-garde composer George Antheil, Lamar developed a new method of frequency hopping, a technique for distinguishing radio transmissions by making the signal jump between different channels in a prearranged pattern. Their secret communication system was created to combat Nazis during World War II, but the US Navy ignored their findings. It wasn't until years later that other inventors realized how groundbreaking the work was. If you use a smartphone today, you can thank Hedy Lamarr. Her communication system was a precursor to wireless technologies, including Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. This work led her to induction into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014.
Amazing.
Wonderful. Oh, that's so cool.
You guys, it almost looks as if she's holding a phone there.
Yeah.
A cell phone.
Yeah,
Ronnie,
She was also a spy.
Is that
That's-
right?
that's true.
She was a spy. I remember learning about her when I went to the National Spy Museum in DC.
Really?
Uh-huh.
She was also a spy.
I thought I'd heard that too.
Okay. Okay, it's question time again. Who wrote the international bestseller Lay Down Your Arms in 1889? I'm sure we've all read it. Was president of the Austrian Society for Friends of Peace and was the first woman to be granted the Nobel Peace Prize in 1905. Okay, I'll just tell you guys. Bertha von Suttner.
Wow.
Wow.
that looks like a Bertha right there. Looks like the name should be Bertha.
No, this is Jane Addams.
Mhm.
Jane Addams was a suffragist, settlement house founder, peace activist, and Nobel Peace Prize winner. In 1889, along with a friend, she moved into an old mansion in an immigrant neighborhood in Chicago, where she lived for the rest of her life.
Mhm.
Hull House, as it was named, provided a place for immigrants of diverse communities to gather. Addams and other Hull House residents sponsored legislation to abolish child labor, establish juvenile courts, limit the hours of working women, recognize labor unions, make school attendance compulsory, and secure safe working conditions in factories. Addams wrote and lectured, openly opposing World War I. After the armistice, she founded the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, WILPF, serving as president from 1919 until her death in 1935. Remembered as a mother of social work, Jane Addams shaped social legislation that continues to impact the world today.
It made me exhausted. Just hearing about her. Okay, quiz time. Who is the famous suffragist who joined Jane Addams in 1915 in founding the Women's Peace Party at a meeting of 3,000 women in Washington, D.C.?
Elizabeth Canton Stady.
Carrie Chapman Catt.
Oh, Carrie Chapman.
Is that any relationship to the one you just said?
I think they were friends.
Carrie Chapman Catt. Okay. Onward.
Wow. Ida B. Wells, 1862 to 1931. With her passion for justice and her abhorrence of wrongdoing, Ida B. Wells could not have become other than what she was, a crusading journalist. Born into slavery in Holly Springs, Mississippi, less than 6 months before the Emancipation Proclamation, Wells experienced the stillborn promise of the Reconstruction era, and then saw the old white supremacist order reinstated through a reign of terror characterized by the barbaric practice of lynching. Wells, who had moved to Memphis and become a school teacher, responded with the power of the pen. Through her own and other Black-owned newspapers, as well as pamphlets and speeches, she reported on and campaigned against lynching across the South and called for actions to curb the practice. She was relentless in her reporting and writing on the topic. She later added other issues such as segregation in public schools to her portfolio of concerns. At one point, Wells was arguably the most prominent Black woman in the United States. Among other distinctions, she was a founder of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Wells died in 1931 at the age of 68. In May 2020, the Pulitzer Prize Board awarded Wells a special citation in honor of her outstanding and courageous reporting on lynching.
Thank you.
She's lovely.
Question time. Who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1946? After being Secretary and Treasurer of the WILPF from 1919 to 1937, she was called with other pacifists by Wilson amoral in 1915, although all the ideas of the Women's Peace Party became his 14 points without acknowledging the authorship.
Wilson?
Oh, my.
I'll
Can
just
you-
tell you.
Give us a clue at that IP, what was that?
Oh, that's the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom.
Sorry, not the clue I wanted.
Wasn't
That's not
President Wilson?
Her name was Emily Green Balch, Balch.
Oh,
You'll know some of the others.
Yeah.
Jeanette Rankin was born in 1880 and she died in 1973. She was the first woman elected to Congress in 1916. She was again elected in 1940. While in Congress, she introduced legislation that eventually became the 19th Constitutional Amendment, granting unrestricted voting rights to women nationwide. She was the only member of Congress to vote against the US participation in both world wars. Continuing her pacifist traditions, Rankin helped form the Jeanette Rankin Brigade, a collection of some 5,000 feminists, pacifists, students, and others opposed to the Vietnam War. Jeanette also served as an officer for Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and campaigned for maternal and child health care and the regulation of hours and wages of women workers. She championed a multitude of diverse women's rights and civil rights causes throughout a career that spanned more than 6 decades.
Thank you. Okay, who helped found the Women's Strike for Peace in 1961, which opposed the Vietnam War? The first woman elected to Congress on a women's rights peace platform.
1961. Not Chisholm.
Was she from Maine?
Hats. Oh, hat. Wearing hats.
Shirley Chisholm? No.
Nope.
I wouldn't do that.
Bella Ab,
Bella Abzug, yeah.
Yes,
Bella Abzug.
yes, yes, that's the one.
Hats.
the hats, the hat did it.
Yeah.
Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson was an American marine biologist, writer, and conservationist who was also an influential book author. She is credited with advancing the global environment movement. Late in the 1950s, Carson turned her attention to conservation, especially some problems she believed were caused by synthetic pesticides. The result was the book Silent Spring in 1962, which brought environmental concerns to an unprecedented share of the American people. Although Silent Spring was met with fierce opposition by chemical companies, it spurred a reversal in national pesticide policy, which led to a nationwide ban on DDT and other pesticides. It also inspired a grassroots environmental movement that led to the creation of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Carson was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Jimmy Carter.
Hey, quiz time. And you may not know this one. Who was it? But I thought it was funny. Who was the Army surgeon in the Civil War and won the Congressional Medal of Honor and worked for dress reform, declaring corsets are coffins? It was Dr. Mary Walker,
Okay.
and she's still alive. She was born in 1919.
Oh,
Patsy Mink was born in 1927 and died in 2002. She was an American attorney and politician from the U.S. state of Hawaii. She served in the U.S. House of Representatives for 24 years as a member of the Democratic Party, initially from 1965 to 1977, and again from 1990 until her death in 2002.
don't let it ring 3 times.
Somebody needs to mute because there's background noise. She was the first woman of color and the first Asian American as a third-generation Japanese American woman elected to Congress, and is known for her expansive work on legislation advancing women's rights and education. While in Congress in the late 1960s, she introduced the first comprehensive initiatives under the Early Childhood Education Act, which included the first federal child care bill, and worked on the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. In 1970, she became the first person to oppose a U.S. Supreme Court nominee on the basis of discrimination against women. Mink initiated a lawsuit which led to significant changes to presidential authority under the Freedom of Information Act in 1971. And in 1972, she co-authored the Title IX Amendment of the Higher Education Act, later renamed the Patsy T. Mink Equal Opportunity in Education Act in 2002. This was the landmark legislation that prohibits sex discrimination in educational programs that receive federal money.
Thank you. What chemist produced a lipstick that would not rub off or stain in 1950 with sales over $10 million in 1953?
Eleanor Rubinstein.
No,
Estee Lauder.
no,
Further back.
think back.
Further back.
My mother always wore her lipstick.
Mary Kay.
Nope. How about Hazel Bishop?
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Have you ever heard of Hazel Bishop?
Yes.
Yeah, she was a real person. She was a chemist. And I messed up somewhere up there. Don just told me that Mary Walker could not have been in the Civil War if she was born in 1919. So
Yeah.
either she was born earlier or She must have been 1819 or something. Okay.
Thank you, Don, keeping her straight.
Yep.
Rosalind Franklin was from Britain and enrolled in college despite her father's protests. She eventually received her doctorate in chemistry at Cambridge University. She spent 3 years studying X-ray techniques in Paris, returning to England to lead a research team to study the structure of DNA, all at a time when women weren't even allowed to eat in their college cafeterias. Heading up another DNA research team was Maurice Wilkins, who ultimately betrayed Dr. Franklin when he showed scientists James Watson and Francis Crick Rosalind's groundbreaking X-ray image of DNA. This enabled Watson, Crick, and Wilkins to determine the structure of DNA. Those 3 men would go on to win the Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology with almost no mention of the work she had done. Watson stated that she would have won the Nobel Prize for Medicine had she been alive, but the Nobel Committee generally did not make posthumous nominations. Franklin went on to study the tobacco mosaic virus and polio, creating the foundation of modern virology before her death from ovarian cancer at the age of 38. Her team member, Erin Klug, continued her research, winning the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1982.
Okay, quiz. You'll know this one maybe. Who introduced America to French cooking in her books and television series?
Julia
19
Child.
Thank you.
Yay. Okay.
Okay, we don't have her name up there yet, do we?
I know, wait.
Yeah, there we are. Okay.
I was looking at a chat. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Susan Laflèche Picot. Susan Laflèche Picot was born on the Omaha Reservation in Nebraska. The denial of health care to an American Indian woman by a white male doctor that she witnessed in her youth inspired her to finish her education and obtain a medical degree. She is widely acknowledged as one of the first Indigenous peoples and the first Indigenous woman to obtain a medical degree. Dr. Picot was an active social reformer as well as a physician in the late 19th century. She was born in 1865. She worked to discourage drinking on the reservation, where she worked as the physician as part of the temperance movement of the 19th century. She also campaigned to prevent and treat tuberculosis, which then had no cure, as part of a public health campaign. Further, she worked to help other Omaha navigate the bureaucracy of the Office of Indian Affairs and receive the money owed to them for the sale of their land. She campaigned for public health and for the first formal legal allotment of land to the members of the Omaha tribe. She died in 1915.
Thank you. Okay, here's our last quiz question. Who was the United States delegate to the United Nations who championed and won approval of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1940?
Eleanor Roosevelt.
Eleanor Roosevelt.
You got it. Okay. This is our last lady.
Okay, born Isabella Baumfree, Sojourner Truth was born in slavery in Swartkill, New York, and escaped to freedom with her infant daughter in 1826 from her then current owner, John Dumont. She found her way to the home of Isaac and Maria Van Wagenen in New Platts, New York, who took her and her baby in. Isaac offered to buy her services for the remainder of the year until the state's emancipation took effect, which Dumont accepted. She had to leave her other children behind and in slavery. Truth learned that her son Peter, then 5 years old, had been sold by Dumont, then illegally resold to an owner in Alabama. With the help of the Van Wagenens, she took the issue to the New York Supreme Court. Using the name Isabella Van Wagenen, she filed a suit against Peter's new owner, Solomon Gedney. In 1828, after months of legal proceedings, she got her son back, who had been abused by those who were enslaving him. Truth became one of the first Black women to go to court against a white man and win the case. The court documents related to this lawsuit were rediscovered by the staff at the New York State Archives around 2022. 6 feet tall, with a powerful voice and driven by deep religious conviction, Truth was an ardent abolitionist and women's rights activist. Truth dedicated her life to fighting for a more equal society for African Americans and for women, including abolition, voting rights, and property rights. Perhaps her best known speech was the stirring "Ain't I a Woman," delivered at a women's convention in Ohio in 1851. When she died, her funeral in Battle Creek, Michigan was the largest the town had ever seen, with more than 1,000 people in attendance, a testimony to how her heroic and courageous life touched so many around her. A memorial bust of Truth was unveiled in 2009 in Emancipation Hall in the United States Capitol Visitor Center.
What a name.
Well,
So
there was a-
Jenner Truth.
Okay, may I add one more line that I didn't know that it was not in there?
Oh, I have a half a line, so I ended it.
Oh, okay. In 2014, she was included in Smithsonian Magazine's list of the 100 most significant Americans of all time.
Wow.
Mm.
Okay,
Have you all,
can you all read all that?
Mhm.
Our
You know, my-
history is our strength. What?
I wanted to ask if everyone here has seen Gladys Muhammad's portrayal of Sojourner Truth.
Yes.
So good.
So
Yeah.
good.
I figured everyone had, but you
Yeah.
never know.
Well, I want to thank Barb Carmichael, Cynthia Heckman. What is your last name? Cynthia Heckman.
Davis.
Davis, sorry. Penny Hughes, Beth North, Barbara Young, Melanie Smith Guillaume, Nimby Cushing, and Ronnie Malone, and Terry Russ for all your help and for reading it so well. When I read it to myself, it didn't sound nearly as nice. So I thank you all. And
Well,
now we
thank
have these
you.
questions. We have a few minutes, not a lot, but we have a few minutes. If I can figure out how to get back to,
I'd like to have somebody available for everybody, all
Yeah.
those things.
Wait a
My
minute.
husband is whispering in my ear,
yes,
and he's saying that he would like to have those things available to people. Can you forward your PowerPoint to people?
yes.
That's
And
one more
it
thing
will
for you
be
to do.
in-
Pam.
It will be included in the video.
Okay.
that's-
Oh, yeah, on the
that-
video. That's right.
That Sarah
And-
puts together.
Okay. And I want to say before we get into the questions, how much I appreciate all the work you've done, Pam, to get all this together. This was
I-
Pam's idea, and she really took the bull by the horns and just worked so hard on it. And I want you to know that it was just fascinating. And
Yeah.
thank you for all your work.
Definitely.
Thank you,
It
Beth.
was wonderful, and thank you so much,
Yeah.
Pam. I know a lot of work went into this. This is wonderful.
Huge amount of work.
Thank you, Beth.
And Pam,
Answer the phone?
Yes,
and Pam, please unshare your screen so we can all see all of our faces again on one
oh,
screen.
you can't see him. I can
No.
see him.
So
And Pam, you're still
unshare,
recording.
unshare your screen.
I can't get there. Oh, dear. Wait,
There. Okay, you're almost there.
I don't know.
Just,
Well, that's Beth, I can tell by his voice.
so
Why can't I?
There
There
should
there
be.
should be a
green
button that
at the
says
bottom
stop
of the
sharing.
Share screen and.
Yeah,
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
You got it. Yay.
Thank you.
All right, I know you were going to ask your questions, but before we get started on that, I just wanted to sensitize everybody to another person for whom today is very significant. Harriet Tubman died on March 10th, 1913.
Wow.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth. I didn't include, there's so many women, and I
Yeah.
didn't get everybody included that could have been. And I figured everybody knew her, so that was and anyway, she's at Howard Park, so
Yeah.
she lives in town, so I didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We'll
The
all go
question-
visit her.
yeah,
And then I do have one person I just wanted to mention, Henrietta Leavitt, the astronomer, because her life was retold dramatically, not exactly according to its truth, in the recent South Bend Civic Theater production of Silent Sky.
okay. Okay, bye. There are some things, thank you, Beth. There are some things in the chat about the upcoming stuff that League of Women Voters needs help with. But did anything surprise you
Oh,
today?
not
Number
really, but it
of-
was so sad. Some
of-
things were just so sad.
The number of women who won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you said about being sad is that it ties in with what Alfred said, that we don't know about them. We,
Yeah.
you know, we have
Yeah.
to have something like this for us to find out because they're not in so much in our history. It's all the men that get the attention.
The
And,
other thing
oh,
that
and some
surprised me
people,
was some who should have gotten it.
Yeah.
Who didn't.
Right, right.
Yes.
It also seemed to me, I was kind of blown away by the extent of the accomplishments of some of these women, thinking about what a struggle. It just seems like making progress has become increasingly challenging. And so that just struck me with some of the people.
Mhm.
NIMBY?
I just wanted to say how impactful it was for me to have the images in front of me as the
Yeah.
stories were being read, because the feeling that just kept coming back to me is that most, if not all of the women,
Can you remember something for
they
me?
operated in complete isolation
Yeah, 215.
without much, if any, support, you know? Some of them probably
Dr. Wine.
in secrecy, especially the scientists, and for not
Mhm.
only not being
You already know
recognized,
that?
but just
Who's
doing
talking?
the same work for less pay and all of that, but it really helped to have the images. So thank you for that piece, Pam.
Oh, it was
Mhm.
great.
well, I have to tell you, it was great fun because putting together the PowerPoint and then figuring out how to zoom in their names. That was really fun. It got less fun as the weeks progressed, but it was fun to put it together initially. What do these women have in common?
Oh,
Courage.
Almost by definition, they struggled against great adversity in order to
Mhm.
accomplish a great deal.
Mhm.
Tenacity.
That's
Very
exactly the word.
Perseverance, same
Correct.
thing.
And belief in
Grit.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think passion.
yes.
yeah, passion.
They didn't stop. They just kept going and going. They were like the Energizer Bunny, you know, they just kept going and going and going. What can we learn from them individually and as a group?
I guess it's that you just have to keep getting your voice heard. You know, you can't ever let someone else stop you from being heard.
That's about right.
And that's a hard one yet today, isn't it?
Yeah, that's hard for women to do. Because, you know, a lot of us who have gray hair in particular, were brought up to be kind of, you know,
Milk toast.
in our place and helpful and supportive and all that, and not be the star of the show. And, or the, you know, the smart one that's pushing ahead. And that's part of our upbringing. So I think young women are less that way, I hope. Although these women managed in their eras to do it, so
Yes, they did.
why can't we?
Yes.
And also the struggle they had was the men that wouldn't listen to them. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
they did it. Many of them were social issues that they took care of, which I suppose the men didn't find important,
Mhm.
maybe.
But so many of the scientists had their work co-opted, it sounded like.
Yes.
Really is so
Especially
unfair.
men.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
why
one
we
of the-
did this today.
Yeah, one of the things that I read about Levitt was that when she was initially hired by Professor Pickerington at the Harvard Observatory, she was paid 25 cents an hour, which was less than half of what her male counterparts were paid.
Okay, so we've added another woman. I know there are many, many more. And there are, yeah. And some of these women that we did today, there were so many more things you could have said about them. You know, there was just lots of stuff on them. But I had to kind of glean a few things, I think, from them. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Very
We
much.
did.
Um,
We did indeed.
And they will be putting, thank you, they'll put, Sarah will put it in, you know, she'll do a
Link or something.
video, yeah. When you get old, you don't remember anything, and I lose my words. Anyway, when I put this into the cloud, she does her magic and she will put it on the Facebook page and also on our webpage. So, and if, you know, and if everybody wants a paper copy, it's always, you know, just get in touch with me. But thank you all so very much. It's been fun and we're done.
Thank
Thank you,
Next
Pam.
week,
Thank you.
come next week or next month, the second Friday again, and I think we're gonna have the Real Services are gonna come and talk to us about what they're doing here in the city and that should be interesting.
Yeah.
So thank you all once again. Have a wonderful day and I'll see you next month.
All right.
Thanks again, Pam.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Pam.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Pam.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.